Rebellions are built on hope.
And welcome to another episode of Radio Rebellion, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Alberto Calderon, and thank you for joining us today on another Star Wars Saturday. That's our co-host over there, OT1 Kenobi, and our very special guest today. We're so happy to be able to talk with Steven Barnes, the author of the new Star Wars book, Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss, that just came out earlier this week. Steven, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, you know, I'm doing great. This is the last day I'm here at Comic-Con, and then I get to go home, and home is always a good idea. On the other hand, I also like being at conventions and meeting fans and signing books and asking people, you know, what they want from a book. And, you know, it's all part of the flow of what it is that my life does.
Oti, how are you doing? I don't want to forget you up there.
I'm doing fine. I'm very tired. And I've had like a long day, but I'm here, and that's what's important.
That's what's important. I was out at a horse retirement center that we go.
I saw you.
Having fun with some horses. Peaceful afternoon, peaceful morning. Well, let's talk Star Wars. Steven, again, congratulations on the book, Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss. It just came out on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. How does that look at that cover? And you just mentioned you're at Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con. We'll talk about it in a couple of seconds. The special edition for Comic-Con, that cover is also amazing.
Yeah, I know. I don't have a copy of the special edition here with me, unfortunately. I gave my copy away to my best friend.
Okay.
I was telling you guys before we started, I was at a pool party. It was for my brother-in-law. And there was a group of Star Wars fans there. So when I was leaving, I was like, oh, I'm going to go interview Steven Barnes because of the Mace Windu books. And I was talking with three people, and all three of them went like, that's the one with the awesome Mace Windu cover. And I was like, that's the one.
That's the one.
It is a nice cover. It really is.
It is.
I'm not, I don't have a lot of visual discrimination. I mean, I'm not good at visual design. So I saw that cover, and I wasn't sure that it was good. You know, until I saw people's reactions to it. And it's like, oh, okay. But, you know, that's literally, that's a problem with my brain, not the cover. I think the cover is great. I've been watching people's reaction to it. And it's like, oh, it's a great cover. That's great.
Yeah. If you say so.
Yeah.
How does it feel, someone like yourself, so you've been doing this for a while, but to have that book finally out there for everyone to enjoy? Is it just full-on release? I mean, relief, I guess?
You know, I've never, you know, I've published, you know, close to 4 million words of fiction.
Wow.
And I've never stopped being nervous. I've never stopped caring what people thought. I think that when you stop caring what people think, you become a hack. You know, you write in order to express an emotion. So my question is, do people understand what I was trying to say? If they understand what I was trying to say, but they don't like it, that's my fault. If they don't understand it, that might be them. But no, maybe that's reversed. If they don't understand what I'm saying, what I was trying to do, I take responsibility for that. I was not clear enough. I didn't do my job right. If they didn't like it, that's on them. If people like this, they don't like that. That's marketing is finding the right people. Now, in this case, what I wanted was for Star Wars fans to love the book. I mean, I was trying to do a book that I thought that they would enjoy. That was one of my primary criteria. So coming to New York Comic-Con was my first chance to see and interact with people in the wild, as it were. You know, it's like, you know, stalking the wild Star Wars fans. What do you think? You know, did I do the job? You know, was it okay? And so there is a certain amount of nervousness in there. And like I said, I think you should be a little bit nervous. You should care. So it's okay. I don't mind a little fear.
Like you mentioned, being in New York Comic-Con, it's kind of starting to wrap up. You were at that.
No, my part of it is starting to wrap up. You know, it's like they've still got a full day and a half and it's going to be wild. Just like really, it just exploded with twice as many people there today as there were yesterday. So it's starting to look more like San Diego Comic-Con.
Wow,
absolute madhouse.
How was that yesterday, being in the Lucasfilm publishing panel, being able to talk about the book again for the first time?
Because we had a packed room, and so there were a ton of fans in there, hundreds of people there, and I had a chance to talk directly to them, and that was very satisfying. I love that. I could do that every day, is actually get out and talk to people. It's one of the things that powers you when you're trying to work and you're working on something and you're minding yourself, well, why should I care so much? Why should I look at every word, every sentence, every paragraph, every image, every scene? Why? It's because there's a fan out there who cares about this. And as much as I care about Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. I've seen except for the first movie, I've seen every one of them on the day that they open. But I don't care about them as much as some of you guys do. And so like I said to you, I understand I am a guest in your house. I want to be a good guest.
Yeah. All right.
It's very nice to hear that, because we always make this joke, like whenever there's maybe backlash to a certain story, it's like we always think like no one goes into Star Wars being like, I'm gonna ruin this for someone. Like it's always nice to hear that, or not hear, but like have people constantly confirm like it's always coming from a place of love, and
it does not always come from a place of love. I can promise you, there are people who write, well, media tie-ins or their own work, and are writing down to their audience.
Okay.
My first book signing, many moons ago, a guy in his late 40s, 50s maybe, came to the signing, and he was a writer, and he gave me his business card, and his card said freelance hack and literary mechanic. He was dead of alcoholism within 18 months.
Wow.
And you can write for money. You can write down. You can write, with contempt, but it poisons your soul. I won't write unless I can find something to fall in love with the story. If somebody says, if I need the money, and someone says, we'll give you X amount of money to write something that I don't care about, and I had to take the contract, I would find something to care about. I would find something to love. I would find something, well, this gives me a chance to say this, do this, something. Because if I don't do that, that's abusing my muse. It's abusing the little boy inside me that is the writing. The writer. It's the little kid inside me that's the writer, not the adult you're talking to. He wants to sit up there and say, let's put on a show. Let's have fun. Wow, lightsabers and spaceships. Wow, that kid has never grown up, and if I'm lucky, he never will. But he's got a badass father to protect him.
Yeah, that's one of the things when people say, "Oh, Star Wars is for kids and don't change." It's like that's that kid inside of us still wants to be awed and amazed by everything that we see in Star Wars. Like you said, we're still adults, but it's that kid that wants to see those stories.
That's right. Never lose your enthusiasms. That's when you start to die. Growing up does not mean stepping away from the kid. It means developing a protective adult self, and then you collect your action figures and you collect your comic books and you have fun because you engage with the real world. Yes, that's right. We engage with the real world. We have to make money. We have to deal with other adults, but every adult we deal with is really a kid wearing an adult suit.
Yep.
That's right.
I wish kids knew that though, because I think they look up to adults and think that there's this moment where there's a transformation, and there really isn't. Like you just start just doing different things that maybe you were doing yesterday.
The truth is that in all arenas of life, that's all transformation is like that. You do the things that the person you want to become does, and at some point you realize you've taken a step every day, and pretty soon you wake up and you're in new territory. It's like, you're still the same guy. Yeah. It's like if you practice martial arts, it's something I understand very well. You just go into school and act like the black belts. You come as close as possible to acting like the black belts. And one day, if you keep doing it long enough, the teacher ties a black belt around your waist. And you realize, I still feel the same in certain ways. I understand myself a little different. The same thing is true in writing. You know, at one point, you know, I'm watching the puppet show, and then as soon as I sell my first story, I'm invited behind the stage.
Mm.
This is what it's like from the other position. I can see the strings, and I can, you know, it's gradual, it's incremental. And you need to bring the older person that you were, the younger person that you were, along with you, or you become a husk, a shell.
Mm-hmm.
And that ain't no fun.
Yeah, I think when my kids say, "Oh, Dad, you're embarrassing me," so, this is me. I'm not doing it on purpose. This is just me.
This is all there is. A major lesson in my life had to do with realizing that you can either be the thing or you can pretend to be the thing. That the same energy that you would use to pretend, to wear a mask, to pretend to be something to people, that's the exact energy you need to become what it is you want to become. So it's like as soon as you realize that other people will never really understand who you are, that other people will always try to make you into what they need you to be to feel good about their lives, but they're also hoping that you will reject that, because it weighs, that mask weighs a lot. So when they meet someone who is free or freer than them, they will both try to tear you down, and they're hoping that you're going to win. Because if you win, if you can get the adult goodies in life without growing up in that way, you're giving them permission to do it. You know, I'm still the same asshole I was when I was 7 years old. I'm just an asshole with 3 black belts and 4 million words in print.
Yeah, you got that to back it up. Yeah. All right, so let's go now. We can just keep going, and we'll see. Go ahead, Dante.
Yeah, no. So you mentioned you basically seen every Star Wars movie.
Yes,
on day one, except for the first one. So
I saw the first one about 5 days after it opened.
Okay, and can you talk to us a little bit about that relationship of you with Star Wars since '77 all the way to a couple of days ago when
so basically I saw the first coming attraction for Star Wars at I think probably like the Grauman's Chinese Theater or something like that in Hollywood, and I wasn't all that impressed. The trailer had a lot of scratches on it. It looked like it had been kind of worn out. The special effects didn't look like anything particularly special. I mean, it's like well, that's interesting. It's another space movie. I'll go see it, sure. Then I had a friend who was not really into science fiction, but told me, he says, "Yeah, I saw the movie, Steve, and I really liked it." I said, "What movie?" "Star Wars." I said, "You like that? Really?" Okay. So I went in to see it, and the instant the Star Destroyer came across the screen, I said, "Oh, okay, now
now we're talking.
Now we're talking. Now, all right. This okay. I get it. I understand why people are reacting this way, because we had never seen anything. The special effects. There were some special effects shot in First Men in the Moon that were as good as the static shots of Star Wars. The special effects in 2001 Space Odyssey in some ways still have not been surpassed, but that was in service to a pastoral story, one that was about the cosmos. You know, the hero of 2001 is the universe itself. Human beings just kind of explain. We had never seen that, along with dynamic movement connected to a dynamic heroic story grounded in myth, so that you really are feeling what's going on, as well as overwhelmed by these groundbreaking effects that George Lucas was doing. It was a breakthrough on multiple levels. There'd never been anything like that. So that was the beginning, and then Empire was even better. You know, Return of the Jedi was not better. For me, I thought that it had a lot of values in it, but you know, those Ewoks, you know, like Ewoks tripping tanks with vines, a little more than I could wrap my mind around. You know, then you get the prequels, which I enjoyed. You know, I saw that you could feel some of the ring rust on the first one, but going back and watching it again, that pod race, fantastic.
Yes,
fight with Darth Maul, fantastic. And the Attack of the Clones, you know, I'm right there. Christopher Lee, hey now, you know.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to Revenge of the Sith, and tying it into the first movie and so forth and so on. Wonderful. So what you have is a major mythology, 20th century and now 21st century mythology. We were watching it come to life, and it's every episode doesn't have to be perfect any more than every James Bond movie is perfect. But James Bond movies are sui generis, and so are Star Wars. So is Star Wars. Star Wars is a separate island of concern, and you can really only evaluate them against each other. That is an amazing accomplishment. So, it is, whereas I've said, I'm not as much of a Star Wars fan as some of the people in that room who live it and breathe it, but I love it. I love Star Wars, and I'm every movie that comes out, I'm right there. And a lot of the stuff on television, it's just, there's so much that I can't keep up with all of it. But I think it is a fabulous world. I mean, just, like I said, sui generis. It is its own thing, and it is a magnificent thing. You think it's easy to keep making movies? No, look how fast the Matrix movies fell off. One wonderful movie and then one so-so movie where you're kind of saying, well, maybe it'll get better than the third one. The third one's like, ugh. And then the fourth was like, ugh. It's like, did you forget why the first one was good? Watch. It's so easy to lose the magic. So easy for the bean counters to start saying, well, let's just do this again. How do you maintain art in there? And so what you have with Star Wars has been able to attract thousands of creative people to work in the various iterations of it for 40 years? I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. It's just crazy. And I'm a tiny little cog in a big machine, and I like what that machine does. So I tried to be the best cog I could be.
And
No, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, it's the way that you mentioned. I think I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's true that Star Wars, we know it's its own thing, and every other science fiction, sci-fi, fantasy out there gets compared to Star Wars, but you can't compare Star Wars to anything else, just to itself.
Exactly right.
Then it's impossible to
stuff to Star Wars. They don't compare Star Wars to the other things. So that says that good, bad, better, superb, whatever, it is a world of its own. And you think about the creative force it takes to create a world. And all I can say is George Lucas earned his billion.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And so we're here talking about a Mace Windu book, so I'm very curious. You talked about the prequels. You enjoyed them when they came out. How's your relationship with Mace Windu been since he first appeared on screen? And he's in Phantom Menace.
I have a relationship with Mace Windu because Mace Windu was pretty much a cipher. We saw him kill people and we saw him bark orders. Mostly have a relationship with Sam Jackson. That's how stars earn their money. They bring gravitas. They bring it. It's like, oh, it's Sam Jackson with a lightsaber. Wow. So it's very cool. The idea of a black Jedi is very cool. I can't miss that. But I did notice that he did not do as much as I would have wished he would do. And that I was aware of the fact that in the subsequent iterations, the books and so forth, I didn't read about him in the books. But from what I heard, he was a little bit of a cipher. Once again, there's not a lot of inwardness. So when they asked me would I be interested in writing this, I had just gotten finished another writing assignment. I was working in the writer's room for the Friday the 13th television series with Brian Fuller. And I was literally on my way driving home. If I'm remembering this properly, I could be mythologizing a bit here. But I was on my way home. I just finished that. I got a call from my agent asking, would I be interested in writing a Mace Windu book? I had some questions about that. It's like, would they let me humanize it? I had some very specific requirements for that. And when they indicated that they would, then that put it in the house of, this is something that might touch my heart. This is something where I could feel like I was making a significant contribution. to the world. And that's kind of what you look for as a creative artist. You look for times that maybe, if you do it right, it makes a difference. If I do this right, if I bring everything I've got to this, if I do my best work, God willing and the river don't rise, could this be important? And within a limited context, I think the answer to that is yes. If I did my job right, I could make a difference. And that's what I tried to do.
Cool. I like that answer. And while you were writing the book, were your thoughts or your relationship with maybe that idea of Sam Jackson, did that change? Did that transform throughout the process?
Because it had to stop being Sam Jackson, and then it became Sam Jackson playing a role, and then it became Mace Windu. Although I visualized his face and I thought about his speech patterns, it eventually became the question of who is this man? I had to get underneath his skin. And remember that for all of his supernatural powers and so forth, he's a man, he's a human being. And I think that my take on it is that, I don't want to be too specific about this, some of the people who had portrayed him or written about him had not, in my opinion, fully embraced his humanity. And so I looked at that as something that I could give to him.
And that's something that's throughout the whole book. There were times that I was reading, it's like, does this feel like the Mace Windu that I know from the movies, from Attack of the Clones or the prequels? Because that character wasn't as expanded as the one we see in the page today. So it took a little bit of time to get used to that idea that, okay, this is not just that stoic.
All you saw of Mace Windu in the movies was barking orders and killing people. Okay. But what was he like behind closed doors? What's he like when he's hanging with his friends? If you can't imagine Mace Windu dancing around the kitchen in his underwear making pancakes, you have not thought about him as a human being, because that's what human beings do. Okay. I've known great warriors, and they have moments where they're cracking jokes and having fun because they're human beings. They're not golems. They're not made of granite and have no feelings. That's nonsense. And I wasn't going to write that. I wouldn't do that. It's dishonest.
Because you mentioned you have this background in martial arts, and there's a part at the beginning of the book, and it goes throughout the whole book, that Mace Windu, his little home that he has all his lightsaber hills kind of in special place, and always takes a time to sit down, meditate, kind of center himself. Is that something you brought from your experience with martial arts that you wanted to put in the book?
I've been in martial arts my entire life, and it's very, very, there are only three things in the world I care about. I care about my writing, I care about my family, and I care about martial arts. That's it. And so the question of, what would a spiritual warrior be like in a world where spiritual phenomena are like electricity, where they're actual physical things, where I can actually demonstrate to you. It's not like, do you feel, the warmth from my hand? It's like, bend my arm. No, it's you're talking about something where you can levitate a pencil with it. All of the world's religious organizations have been built on stories of miracles that the people at the head of the organization cannot demonstrate. Does that mean, that doesn't mean that these miracles did not exist? It means that you need faith. Faith doesn't exist in the Star Wars universe in the same way, because they can actually demonstrate it. So you actually have to ask yourself, well, what would that be like? What would it be like to live in a world in which you can demonstrate the things that people talk about, in old texts? The mountain came to Muhammad. Jesus, raises the dead. Buddha does this. I wanted to ask the question: if you start with the human, how do you touch the spiritual realm, where matter and energy are partially controlled by and flow through the human heart? What is that? So I had to go to the edges of what I have seen and know in terms of martial arts and yoga and meditation and things that I've done, and ask myself, well, if parallel lines meet in infinity, what's out there? And then bring that back and say, how would that affect a human being? And so, yeah, absolutely, it's informed by spending half a century doing these things.
Speaking of faith in Star Wars, one of my favorite things in all Star Wars is, of course, the Jedi and the way the Force works and how it's visualized. And I always love seeing how other people interpret not just the Force, but how other cultures, their views on the Force. And here we have the web, the people of New Saxis kind of gravitate to. Where did that idea come from?
Oh, it developed slowly. I developed New Saxis as I went. World building is one of the skills of science fiction that I learned at the feet of masters. Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle, they taught me to think that way. And even though Star Wars is not science fiction, it's science fantasy, we don't really care how it works.
Yeah.
We care how it feels.
Yeah. Okay? Fire in space, we don't care. Just
science
make me feel something.
Literature of thought. Science fantasy in space fantasy, space opera is a world of feelings. Okay? So I needed to believe in the world of New Saxis, because I'm not capable of writing if there is not some consistency there. My brain won't work that way. So I knew I wanted to build a society that was inside a giant geode, because Star Wars is a world of monocultures, and monoecologies. Each planet has a dominant. It's part of the fun. It's part of the buy-in. You don't try to justify it. This is just the way it is in that universe. Dig or split. So that was the monoecology that I wanted to play with. But then once I got into it and I started developing the creatures and the ecology and the society and how did that society happen and so forth, then one of the things that began to develop was this notion that there were mushrooms down there. And when I first started it, that was just a goof. And it was just sounded like it would be cool. But at a certain point, it's like I punched him. You don't think about how you formed your hand and how you moved your hips and how you did this. That's all unconscious competence. So the thing that sounded cool to me, some part of me knew I could make it work, or it wouldn't have felt cool. You follow your feelings at that point, but you educate your feelings. So if all I really wanted was, in one sense, do something that was a little bit Alice in Wonderland, I could see a caterpillar smoking a hookah on top of a mushroom, where the caterpillars turned into spider worms, and the mushrooms turned into a planet spanning ecology through the mycelial connection, and then it hit me at some point that these things were sensitive in this particular way, and then hit me in this way. That the mycelium becomes a metaphor, a physical metaphor for the interconnectedness of the Force. And then I remembered an article that I read talking about the largest structures in the universe, which are these energetic webs of gravity and so forth between different planets and stars and so forth. And all of it started coming to me, and in a piece of information here, and a quote from there, and an idea from there. There's a part of me that's always sifting through them and saying, does it fit? Does it make sense? And if it makes sense, then is it cool? Would it be fun? Because there are things that would make sense that aren't cool. So it's like, of that set of things that are cool and make sense, they become, let me try it out. So I started trying it out. I said, does this work? If I create the world this way, is that something that people will enjoy? So you notice I've gone through those levels of, does it make sense?
Yeah.
It's cool to me. Now, would the readers enjoy it? If all those things are true, then it stays in the book.
Yeah. How fun is it just to go through that whole having an initial idea and then it starts to expand it as you get all those other ideas or all the books that you've read?
What's the best sex you've ever had? It's that good.
Yeah. All right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about that in his movie Stay Hungry or Pumping Iron.
Oh, Pumping Iron. Yeah.
The intense pump from weightlifting is better than sex. Now, I understand that he doesn't mean it's more intense than that. But when that level of pleasure, if you can find something approximating that level of pleasure that connects to the thing you do in life, you're going to spend the time and energy necessary to get good at it. Mm-hmm. It's called sexual transmutation. It's actually talked about in the book Think and Grow Rich, that you take the energy that most people use chasing around after nookie, and you find something that motivates you that much. And when you do that, you look up one day and you've mastered that discipline. It's as simple as that, because you did it every day. You did it with passion. You cared about it. You did it. And you look up one day and other people looking at you and saying, wow, you're a master at this. Mm-hmm. And you realize, I just kept doing it.
So a big part of the book is Mace going through the kind of reawakening of his childhood and having these dreams of when he joined the Jedi. Was he abandoned by his parents? And that informs a lot of his decisions going forward. You've mentioned already that a big part of what you wanted to do with Mace was humanize him. Was that part of the reason you went this approach with him of him kind of questioning his relationship with the Jedi Order? Was that part of that humanizing of the character?
It was part of that. I could probably look at anything I did in that book and give you more than one reason why I did it. Okay. So I needed there to be a question of whether or not Mace could succeed. Mm-hmm. In order to do that and still respect his level of power within the Jedi Order, I needed to attack him. I needed to diminish his capacity so that he would have an arc. Mm-hmm. If he's a badass at the beginning, a badass in the middle, and a badass at the end, that's a dull book to me. That there needs to be a give and take. Okay. So my thought was, how can I break him down so that I could then reconstruct him? And in the process of breaking him down, we get to examine his psychology and his physiology, we get to examine what he is, because we're taking him apart. So I needed to diminish him in order for us to understand just how magnificent this human being is. Because if you see him at his weakest, and then you see the component parts as he puts himself back together and becomes this utter badass, baddest man in the galaxy. To take him through that process allows us to appreciate him more, as well as humanizing him and understanding, it isn't that he has no flaws. It isn't that he has no fear. It's that he is connected to and has a commitment to something that is larger than himself. And enough larger than himself that he can step out of his ego, he can step out of his pain, he can step out of his poor little me and be the magnificent warrior that he needs to be in order to do what it is he's committed to doing. Soldiers know what they're, are fighting for because they were ordered to do so. Warriors fight because something they love depends upon it. Mm-hmm.
So you were mentioning, like, when you were in the process of deciding to write the book, you talked about some things you had to include in the book that you wanted to do as part of that humanization.
Yeah.
The relationships in Star Wars is something that has always been there, but I think it's taken a little bit for us to see relationships in the Jedi Order. It's starting to happen more and more. So how important was it for you to include that element?
We wouldn't be talking.
So it was very important.
Very important.
We wouldn't be talking. Draw your own conclusions about that.
Okay. And you were talking about warriors. For you, what makes a great Jedi? Rather than a warrior, a Jedi specifically.
Jedi isn't something separate from a warrior. A Jedi is a particular type of warrior. A Jedi is a spiritual warrior, from my point of view, who can actually touch the power of the universe. And that's all that is. There have been sacred monks, warrior monks. They are in some ways like warrior monks. The aspect of the warrior is the martyr is willing to die for what they believe in. The warrior is willing to die and take you with him. That's what makes the difference. You're totally willing to die, but also willing to kill. You know, make no mistake. It's like people talk about, oh, the peaceful warrior, this and so on. Yeah, in some ways, but what that there's no difference there between a martyr and somebody willing to die for what they believe in. Warriors have force, they have power, they can do the job. Okay, and so the Jedi are a form of that, you know, and because they operate under, you know, the council and this, that, and the other. They have these dictates and they're following these commands. But you're talking about a form of warrior monk.
Yeah. There's a quote in the book. I'm trying to find it, but I think it's King Shan talking to Mace about Jedi always fight, but do you know what you're fighting for? Something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it reminded me what you're saying right now. I love going back a little bit to the relationship question. It's the character that he forms his attachment to, which is King Shan, Nightbird, which is nothing that Mace has ever kind of encountered. This foil to him. How important was that character? How did you came up with, if I'm going to put Mace Windu, a Jedi Master, in their position, having feelings for someone, the person is going to grow feelings towards is going to be this King Shan Nightbird and this other kind of otherworldly person.
It has to be a woman at his level.
Okay.
Because otherwise he's abusing his power. You know, obviously a Jedi could seduce any table, any tavern when she met. I mean, it's like power is hugely attractive. Power is an aphrodisiac, and these are the most powerful human beings in the galaxy. So it would be unethical to have a relationship with just an average person. That's a heartbreaker. But so I needed to create someone who is a leader, who has her own force, her own power, such that they are equals and can walk together for a while. A relationship is two people traveling the same road at the same pace for long enough to walk together. They're climbing the same mountain together, and you just kind of look at them and say, we're going to the same place. We have the same force, are on the same wavelength. Shall we walk together for a while? And that's a friend. If you get a yum factor on top of that, if you also look at them and your hindbrain kind of goes ding, 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 now you have the potential for a relationship.
Yeah.
So the question was not whether or not Jedi can love. The question is whether or not they can love without forming attachment.
Sure.
So if the woman had not been at his level, he could not be confident that she would be okay. You know, is this wrong to start? Because I know I cannot be there for you always. You know, what is this? Who are we? Can we be together for a little while? And I always start with characters that are kind of stick figures. I tend to start with a story and then ask myself, who are the best characters to see that story through? And they start as stick figures, and I build them out as I go. You know, I discover them as I go. And eventually they start talking to me. If I started with a character, then the question would be, what is the best situation through which to explore this character? So I can start a character, I can start a situation. You know, the Aristotle's question about what's important, more important, plot or character, it's a trick question. You know, all plot is what a given character does in response to a particular situation. So you explore the situation through the character, and you explore the character through the situation. You know, and so the two are actually part of a whole.
Sure.
And I can enter into that yin and yang. I can enter into that dance at any point. You know, it's like, if you understand geometry, if I give you 3 points, you can draw the rest of the circle, right? As a writer, and I understand the geometry of story because I have it in unconscious competence through having done millions of words. You tell me anything about a character or a situation, and I can give you a potential rest of it. It might not be what it is that you want to do, but I can tell you the characters that need to be there. Or you start with the characters, and I can tell you the situation that you need to empty them out. You know, if you have, you know, John McClane, who is an egotistical, you know, stuck is toxic masculinity cop from New York, what would be necessary to empty him out? Well, you put him in a situation where all of his skills are tested to the maximum, and he has to keep going because the woman he loves is at risk. You know, you're always looking for that. What's the situation that empties it? Because when you go to the gym to work out, you work out until something called muscle failure.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't work out to muscle failure, your brain does not expend the resources necessary to get you stronger, because it's a survival response. You're signaling to your brain, unless I get stronger, I will die. Unless I get stronger, my family will die. So you see people, psyching themselves up for these big lifts. They're imagining that they're lifting a car off their kid. Mm-hmm. How else are you going to tap into that emergency reserve? That's what's necessary to make you stronger. So you're always looking for that. And so if you have a character like Mace Windu, and the Jedi are the strongest warriors, and the Jedi Council are the stronger still, and Mace Windu might be the strongest human Jedi, certainly, and maybe one of the strongest, maybe the strongest overall. What the hell will test him? Mm-hmm. And so, and who's the woman who could love him? Who could stand next to him? Who could match his energy? Those are the kinds of questions you have to ask as you're creating characters. And like I said, I create them on the fly. I don't create large dossiers for them before I begin to write. I use writing to discover the world of the character.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that's also has to be a great, not relief, but a great moment when that character kind of just comes alive as you're writing.
Oh my God. It's what you pray for. It's what you hope for. You don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. It's what one of my mentors used to call a bald and unconvincing narrative until the characters start talking to you. Mm-hmm. At that point, the magic takes over. At that point, I'm not directing the story with my forebrain, my hindbrain, the 6-year-old kid. The 7 or 8-year-old kid I was when I decided I wanted to be a writer is coming to life, and it's like, oh, we're creating a world here, and look at these things that are happening in this world. And what it is, I write until I can hear the music. There is a music that starts happening at a certain point, and then all I have to do is conduct the orchestra, and then write down the notes. It's just trying to find a way to express this, because ultimately it's ineffable. It's all about words, but ultimately storytelling, music, jazz is what happens between the notes. Storytelling is what happens between the words. I can put the words there, but you're looking for what's called a transderivational search. If I tell you a word, every time I use a word, your brain starts looking for the meaning of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. If there are a succession of words, then you go meaning. So the words are up here, meaning and the feeling and connect with the meaning are down here. So I am guiding your unconscious mind by using words and images and certain patterns. The unconscious part of this is too complicated to control with the conscious mind. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, what you do is you do your best with the conscious stuff, and then you pray that at some point your unconscious mind will take over. And so far in my career, that's always happened. But something, a day may come when it doesn't happen. It wasn't today. Mm-hmm. It might be tomorrow. So you never take it for granted. You never take your muses for granted, and you always give thanks for the blessing.
I'm glad it hasn't happened today. Today's not that day, because one of my favorite parts of the book was New Saxis and how that whole town down there was kind of expanded. And we've seen a lot of different media, like places and cities become characters in the world that we're playing. And New Saxis felt like a character inside, of course, Metagos and inside Star Wars. But you have like the Great Wheel, the Floating Palace, the Nursery, all these places. Was that a part of it? I know you talked a little bit about how everything's connected, but making New Saxis feel like a character in the book, and how did you go about doing that?
Go back to that thought about if I give you 3 points, you can draw the circle. Mm-hmm. I feel that there is a platonic ideal of my story, that I'm a reporter, and the story actually happened. in a different reality.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is reporting back. But what I'm doing is I'm trusting that my unconscious mind understands the geometry of story. Okay. And it will give me 1% of that full picture every time I sit down. Any day that I sit down, it will give me 1% more. Okay. News Axis came into existence a piece at a time, but it wasn't like a Lego block. It was more like developing a picture. You know, it's just like I have a shadowy sense of it, you know, and then it's a little bit sharper, you know, and maybe I made a mistake. That's not true. It would have to be this because it doesn't fit what I understand the geometry of story. It doesn't fit what I understand about how society is developed or the life cycle of animals, you know, or whatever. When my wife, who's a great horror writer, is creating a monster, we're working on something together, and she has a monster, I'll ask her, well, what's the life cycle of the monster? What does the monster want? You know, what are its internal motivations? Otherwise, it's just a thing with teeth crouching in the shadows that's here to scare you. No, it has its own motivations. What does it want? What is it? What we learn about the world teaches us certain things about the way physics work and physiology and sociology and psychology and so forth. So we understand these things kind of unconsciously. So I have to keep working with the story until it makes sense to the part of me that understands how people develop, how animals develop, how societies develop. So if I know this about one thing about News Axis, that implies a ton of other questions. You know, how do they get rid of their cesspools? You know, how do how do they get their food? What medium of exchange do they use? You know, how is their society controlled from the top to the bottom? Is it democratic? And is it this? And is it that? When you and by the way, people who are interested in world building, I could not suggest a course more strongly than Big History. It's in Wondrium or the Great Courses. It's a course called Big History. It's the history of the entire universe from the Big Bang to 1950. You know, it's an amazing book. It's an amazing course. It's like 25 hours, 50 half-hour lectures, taking you all the way through physics to astronomy to geology to biology to anthropology to, you know, sociology and so forth and so on. Once you understand how it all fits together, you kind of have it back there. So I say I want a society that's set in a geode. All right. Tell me, how would they build around this stuff? What kind of tools would they have to use? You know, this, that. I have to try to understand more about this society than I write about so that I have a little safety. I knew more about News Axis than I said.
There's more out there.
There's more out there. That's exactly right. But then you say, well, what do I need to give the reader the illusion that I understand this world, that this world is real? A writer is God in the universe of the story. You know, an author must have authority. Okay. I develop authority by, some people would do it by creating like an encyclopedia based on this book. That's totally legitimate. I do it by building as I go, and then understanding that there is a physics of the way societies develop, animals evolve, and so forth and so on. You need to be, if you're going to be a writer, you need to be constantly researching some area of expertise that you care about. Science fiction writers or writers of all kinds, I think, should have an emphasis, should have something that they have decided that they want to become absolutely expert at. I am expert at understanding human mental and physical development to create excellence. I'm an expert on mastery. That's what I decided to become an expert at. But there's so much social context and biological reality, and you know, how do human beings motivate themselves? What are the prime movers? And this, that I had to have an opinion about those things. And given that, then I can have an opinion about how societies develop, and I can build a metagos, and I can build a disaster.
So I want to talk about the practical process of creating a world. And as Alberto mentioned, there's all these places in New Axis, and from what he told me, there's like these tunnels, and there's also like all these groups, and there's some symbiotic relationship in the planet and in the city. How do you like practically keep track of this? Are you making maps? Are you sticky notes? Is there like a Bible on New Axis?
No, I did not create a Bible on New Axis, but I took notes, and I will create lists of questions about it, and then I have to trust my mind to hold that together. I mean, I can see News Axis. You know, I can close my eyes and I'm there. You know, and I built it one piece at a time. But you asked a different question. That I use sticky notes. I use Microsoft Word. I use Google Docs. It was really written on Google Docs. But it was also written on a program called Writer Duet. It was written as a script before I wrote it as a book. You know, so I wrote it as like a 200-page script. You know, because I can write a script much faster than I can write a book, and the software is specialized for writing. So I can go from sticky notes to index cards. I've got a huge whiteboard in my office. I got a desk. It's just a whiteboard. You know, and I can scribble on that, and I can make notes, and I can draw things, so forth. And I had my Star Wars encyclopedia here, and then I had a visual encyclopedia there, and I used various software, things to do to help me with my research. And I wasn't going to use AI to write the damn thing. That's an abomination.
Yeah.
But I can use it like Google to research. You know, what starships were used at the Battle of such and such. You know, give me, boom, there it is. Okay, great. You know, I can take that. You know, what might this be? Bang, I've got that. So I will use everything, you know, from the Writer Duet to outlining programs to mind map programs. And then one of the things I found is that if I take that point of view, like being a reporter, that the attitude, the story really happened. As I write about it, I may find that some of my assumptions about that story were incorrect, and I have to make a correction. Something didn't fit, you know, that I can't do that. So I will use everything, every tool. I have, you know, journals and this and that, and I will just keep expressing the same idea in different ways, different formats. If I put it on Google Docs, if I put it on 3x5 cards, I put it in an outlining program, if I do this, every time I express the same idea in a different way or the same scene, I will take what I know about it, and what I know ultimately, because I trust my storytelling apparatus, is like having 3 dots. I understand the geometry. So the circle that would allow me to include those 3 dots has a certain shape already. Give me 4 dots and I'll give you a sphere. Again, now it's 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional. This is why a writer, I think, needs to start with short stories. Do not start writing at a novel length. You write something small, a small enough, you know, like just 3, 4, 5 pages, a small world, knowable. You can begin to understand the geometry of story and how it relates to your emotions. You can hold it in your mind. And as you go, then you make it a slightly larger story. It's exactly the same as if you're trying to learn how to juggle. You don't start with 5 chainsaws. You start with you start with something that is small enough that you can do it and think about it. You know, it's like I'm thinking about catching it. You know, it's like, okay, but then you're looking for the moment when you were doing it and you were thinking about something else, but your hands kept moving. Now it's getting uncompetent. Now I can add another scarf. Now maybe I can try, I can get to 5 scarves. Now let me try 3 balls. Okay? So you start with something that is short and small enough that you can wrap your heart around it. Because one way of looking at a story is a Swiss watch tied to a beating heart, is one way that I had put it. You're looking for the engagement of your physical energy, your emotions, and your mind. You start small, very small, and then you slowly get larger and larger. And you try to push yourself just a little bit, just like 1% every time. If you get 1% better every week, you get hella better in 5 years. That's a lot of growth in 5 years. It's all the growth you need in 5 years. People will overestimate how much they can accomplish in a year, but underestimate how much they can accomplish in 5 years. So if you do that, if you set it up so that you're slowly getting better, you look up one day and you're juggling 8 chainsaws. It's as simple as that. It really is. But you have to have faith in yourself to be able to start small and grow. Otherwise, you'll take on too much too soon. You'll fail, and you'll think, "Oh God, I guess I just can't do this." That's bullshit. You just give yourself a chance to develop.
Yeah, I mean that's just a general life message. I guess something to like kids when they're failing at something. Just keep trying. Just keep practicing. Eventually, you'll get to the point you want to get.
You have to do more than just keep trying. You also need proper mentorship. A proper I have something. I have a book on how to become a Jedi. I didn't say that out loud. It's called the Magic Formula, and it's my approach to personal development. And MAGIC is the acronym that I use. You need a map or model. In other words, you study people who have already accomplished the thing that you want to do. That's the M. The I is, the A in Magic is action. You have to divide what you have to do up into daily actions that you can take or weekly actions you can take, and then you need to do it. G is gratitude, which is you control fear with gratitude, anxiety, fear, guilt. You can't feel fearful and grateful at the same time. So every day you focus on, you find something to be grateful for, to control your emotions, because emotions will knock you out of the game faster than everything else combined. I is intention. That's your goal. You have a clear goal. My goal was to write a damn good Star Wars novel. Okay? And then the C is for core. It has to come from the core of your being. You have to feel that this thing you're doing is in alignment with your values, your truth, your ethics, that you can't do bad to do good. You can't postpone, I'm gonna be miserable so I can be happy down the road. No, you find some way to be happy now. Now is the only moment there is. So it takes more than just work. But if you take work out of the equation, everything else collapses. Sure. You need a mentor, you need to have a goal, you need to control your emotions, and you need to feel that this is truly who you are.
Someone that didn't control the emotions too well, but didn't start juggling 3 chainsaws as one being, then 2, wanted 3, wanted Mace Windu to join them, was this being of Chulok. Like this great, like you mentioned, monster out there, but he had his intention, what his goal was. Why this character of Chulok, these 2 beings connected as one, half Rodian, half Faraki, wanted Mace Windu, another strong being, to join them? Why this as a main foil to Mace Windu?
Because it felt cool.
It was. It is. 2 heads, 4 arms, 4
However, if I was to analyze it psychologically, it's because Mace was split and trying to come back together, and Chulok represented the 2 that were one. So there is a thematic unity between the 2 of them. But it's boring to talk about that. I can analyze my writing. You can analyze, you can vivisect a dog, and you'll understand everything about a dog, but that dog will never play catch with you again. So if I say it was cool, that means that it appealed to the kid and the adult part of me. It's like, that would be cool. And then, well, how might that work? And then I would take a look at a literary precursor to that in the Modesty Blaise novel Sabretooth that was written back in the 60s. You had a pair of twins that wore a harness that connected them, and they fought like one being. Okay. And so the fact that their names were Chew and Locke has nothing to do with this. I love literary callbacks. I love saying how, because I think the Modesty Blaise novels had the best fight scenes ever written, and Peter O'Donnell, who wrote them, was my friend for 30 years. So the psychology of those 2 was very different. You know, and so the psychology here was about being a super being. The psychology there was the two twins hated each other and were fighting constantly, except when they were killing somebody else. So I stole, you know, I borrowed with acknowledgement some of the images from there in order to create something that would be a genuine threat. We'd wonder, wow, can Mace Windu defeat this amazing being with 4 arms and 4 legs? You know, you're always looking for that. How do you push him to the limit? And he was pushed to the limit. That Mace realized he could not beat this being, and which led to the decisions that were made at the climax of the book. I don't want to be too specific about it, but that was all, you know, about, you know, it's always, how do you want the reader to feel when they put the book down? And then every choice you make has to feed into that feeling you want them to have. So one of the things I wanted them to feel was exultation. Wow, what a story. I understand this character much more than I did. In order to do that, you have to empty the character out. What would be a threat to Mace Windu at his most magnificent, at his strongest? What would still be a threat to him? So it's creating that so that we will be afraid for him, or we'll be afraid for somebody that he cares about. If we know that he survives this, then you can't make me scared for him, but I can make you scared for the woman he cares about. Yeah,
which I think is a great addition. Like you said, we know Mace Windu's alive. We'll see him in a couple of weeks in the next movie. So there's no.
I would love that. You know, I would, Lucasfilm, or if you're listening, I'm the guy who could write that for you. You know,
we'll get to that. We'll have that question.
Anybody you've ever had, I'm the guy.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
I'm gonna ask the most serious question right now.
Please.
So, as a long time Star Wars fan, if you could have a lightsaber, what color would it be? There's this famous story with Sam Jackson and the purple lightsaber. So I think the sky's the limit for color lightsabers.
Gold.
Ooh,
gold. Okay. Nice. The gold yellow is starting to pick up. Like I'm seeing it more and more, and gold, I like.
I spent actually better than a lightsaber. I would like 2 short lightsabers.
Ooh, okay,
dual lightsabers. You know, because the weapon that I've trained in the most was the 24-inch Filipino Kali sticks. Okay. I was actually in the Philippines earlier this year, training Filipino stick and knife fighting for a week. It's a beautiful, beautiful art. And actually, Filipino martial arts are what they're using for choreographing
the Acolyte.
The Acolyte, that's right. Yeah. And I actually was on a panel at San Diego Comic-Con with one of the stunt women, and what's it, Diane Inosanto?
Oh, yeah. Diana Lee Inosanto, yeah.
Diana Lee Inosanto, yes. And I trained with her father. You know, Danny Inosanto.
Oh, no.
He was arguably the greatest martial arts instructor who ever lived by some standards. And then her husband. So the Filipino martial arts are very near and dear to my heart. I love them. They're beautiful. They synchronize with the way I think and feel and breathe.
Oh, that's very cool. And how was it seeing that come to life a little bit in the Acolyte?
It was great. It was wonderful. It's like, I just every evening after a day's work, at about 5:30. So I quit. I go downstairs from my office, and my wife and I will have dinner, or I will just kick back on the couch and watch something silly like old Johnny Quest cartoon or the Venture Brothers or Star Wars. One of the beautiful things about writing the book is that I had an excuse to watch Star Wars every day. That was my major research. I wasn't reading the other novels. I was watching the movies. I was trying to understand where did this all come from? What is it that people are really looking for? The reason I used rather exhaustive descriptions of Metagos is because I did not have $100 million worth of industrial light and magic special effects. I had to find a different way to make this world mundane, so that it was almost boring, because I'm describing things. Now, when I threaten it. When I destroy part of it, I'm destroying a world you have lived in to the point that you take it for granted. That you're almost saying, I don't want any more of this description. Let me take you to the edge of that. And that's a difficult thing to calibrate. Maybe, if I did that too much, then I apologize. I mean that very honestly. But it was a conscious decision that I made to make it so that you were in a travel log almost. Now, these people matter. When I burn an orphanage and you care about these kids, when I drop a stalactite on the city, you're saying, oh my God, you can see it in your mind because I have given you everything you need to create a full model of this in your mind. Okay. These are the kinds of decisions that you make as a creator, and they don't always work. But what I can promise you is that I really cared. I was really trying. I was doing my best to do the job that the fans were hoping I would do. I gave it everything I had, and if I didn't pull it off completely for everyone, I take responsibility for that. I'm the best writer I know how to be. I always wish I was a better writer. I'm always trying to be one. But for the people who I've talked to at this point, they seem to feel that the book did communicate what I was trying to do. They did seem to feel, and that's, man, I love that feeling. I love this career. I love life. I love writing. I love the fans, and I love Star Wars, and I love science fiction. I just do. I'm the happiest guy in the world, man. I actually live my dream.
Yeah.
I'll
be honest, because you just mentioned when I was reading the book and all the description at the beginning, first half of the book or the first third, there was a point I was like, okay, I understand the world I'm at. I want to move forward. Not to the point that I was bored. It was like, okay, how much do I need to learn about myself?
Yeah.
But by the end of it, I just told you my favorite part is how much we learn about New Saxes and all the different places. But it all comes from that building block before that I kind of thought, okay, let's move on. But it worked.
When we're off the air, I will tell you a secret. But I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it right now. But that reaction that you had was something I knew would happen. So the question is, okay, so how do you help people through that? I had a strategy, and ultimately I was not able to implement that strategy because the people at Lucasfilm, felt that there were some things that they did not want in the book. That's, like I said, I'm a tiny little cog in a big machine, so I don't take it personally. But if I had known that I would not be able to do a particular thing that I wanted to do, I might have made some plans differently. But I have heard that, there are a number of people who feel that way, that the middle section had, that I could have lost a page of description in there. I will own that. I will take responsibility for that. Other people disagree, but I wanted everybody to love the book and love all aspects of it. So whereas I'm very, very happy to finish the book feeling like, wow, I made it. This is a great world. We learn as we go. We do the best we can, and all I can do is I swear that I was doing my best.
It shows. It shows. I mean, again, it worked.
That world, man. It's an honor.
Yeah.
There are people who dream Star Wars. They wake up in the morning thinking about Star Wars.
Do a show about Star Wars every Saturday.
That's right. That's exactly right. So it's what you guys think about it that matters more than anybody else, even the people who hired me. That's a business relationship. This is different. This is a relationship of trust and love, and you need to know and to feel that I respect your enthusiasms. I wanted to be a good guest at your table.
Well, we love having you at our table. And just to finish up, you kind of teased it a little bit and being a small cog in this machine. What are your thoughts of Mace Windu maybe surviving that fall after the fight from the Emperor? And would you
he survived.
She survived. And
I know, I've got headcanon about what happened to Mace Windu. I think he went back to Metagus.
Oh, I mean, now he has something to go back to.
That's right. He was wounded. He'd go back there, and I even know how I would bring him back into the Star Wars universe. I will tell you once we're off the air.
Give this guy a call. I mean, the book just came out. there's a story there.
There is,
That's
and I've written enough television. Like I said, I'd love to do it. I'm the guy. I could pull it off. I promise you, I could pull it off.
I hope and wish that you get the chance.
Thank you. And if I do, then I promise you, just reach out and I'll come back on and we'll talk again.
We'll be here right there.
Fantastic. Yep. That's really great. This is, people who like the way I think about these things, I do a Zoom every week, usually Friday, although I did one when I'm traveling like this, sometimes I have to do it on Saturday. But it's about writing and life and becoming a Jedi. I mean, perfecting oneself. And if you'd like to be part of that, just go get on my mailing list. It's free at www.stevenbarneslist.com. And we have a good time on there. And for all of you guys, listening to this, never, ever, ever give up your enthusiasms. They will power you through the darkest times in your life. And never let anybody tell you that you cannot be a spiritual warrior in your own life. The reason we love Star Wars is because on some level, we know damn well we're Jedi. We just haven't figured out how to get all the way through the temple. There is power in the universe, and it starts with love and courage. You never give up your dreams.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, Steven. Real quick, I just want to highlight Sith Lord Society just got his book today, so go read it. Enjoy. Come back, watch the full interview. Of course, our friend Dale was here talking about how everything, all the characters have to be relatable and all that fun stuff as we were.
Oh, I didn't know people were watching live. I didn't know that. That's so cool. Hey, everybody. Guys.
Yeah.
I would have done this a little bit differently. Maybe we could have had people asking questions or something. But anyway,
we got a few seconds. We got a couple minutes if people want to put something in the chat. But
if anybody wants to put something in the chat, we can absolutely do that. That's fantastic. I got a dinner in 50 minutes, but I've got a few minutes. If anybody has a question for me, this is great. You guys are what matters to me. I needed fandom so much when I first discovered it. Absolutely. I was a four-eyed, pot-bellied little nerd, and I needed, I found friends and lovers and business and mentors, within fandom. So I don't need fandom in the same way I did, but I will never leave it. I will never gaffiate. This is, you guys are my clan. You're one of my clans. So if there's any questions you have for me right now, just drop it in.
Yeah. We'll wait and see if there's any questions you want to ask, anything different.
Yeah, I would like to know, like, you mentioned you have the idea for what's next in Mace Windu's life. Is there in all the years of being a Star Wars fan, is there like any other character you'll be like, I would love to write a book about this other person?
I don't know. I never looked at Star Wars that way. Like, I would like to do this. I never thought about writing for Mace Windu. They kind of, there's a part of me that would love to explore Yoda. But they're keeping that very close to their chest. And at some point they might do that. It would be interesting. It would be interesting to see how Rey feels. I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
So I guess in general, I don't tend to think quite that way. I don't have that kind of feeling of ownership.
Okay. I would like to know how Rey feels too.
Yeah.
She's someone I think about a lot.
Yeah. There's somebody at Skywalker Academy said, I used to think my mom wasn't born and didn't have to grow up. Somehow she lost that. So many of us do. So what it lets you train your adult self to be a badass in the adult world so that it can protect that kid inside you, that yummy, warm, chewy picture of who you are. I hope you can see that I've got that. That's I literally meditate on that little boy every day. I literally ask him, there is something I call the ancient child meditation. where I visualize the child that I was, and I also visualize the old man I'm going to be on my deathbed. And I let the two of them talk, and I just listen to it. And all the wisdom and all the power you could possibly want comes out of your connection between the part of you that began life with all of that excitement and enthusiasm and optimism, and the old person you're going to be on the other side of your dreams. All ego gone, all masks dropped. You don't need to pretend to be anything for anybody. You understand what is the conversation between those two. That's the question. Yeah, you know, if you can do that, you can learn a lot about yourself. Seriously. It's one of the things that's in that book I wrote on the magic formula, which is available at www.realheroesjourney.com. That's the address again.
We'll put it down.
Sales mode, boy. don't tempt me.
Yeah. So just general being at the convention, and you talked already about how important fandom is for you and being
my tribe.
Yeah. When you see people online or anywhere else kind of getting down on everything, being Star Wars or any other type of fandom, but then you go to conventions and see the love that there is for this world, how do you balance that and kind of forgetting about the social media world and
do I seem like somebody who gives a shit what strangers think about me?
Not really.
I mean, really. Yeah. It's like, it's like, I'll be honest with you for a second. That one of the reasons why I've spent, I've got 3 black belts, and one of them is very, very high level, and I've done, trained in martial arts in the Philippines. I've done an awful lot of that is just so that I can say I don't care. I don't care. I'm a goofball. I've always been a goofball. I'll always be a goofball. You want some of this? Bring it. You'll run into the part of me that isn't a goofball. There's another part of me altogether. I'm not all warm and fluffy, but I'm certainly warm and fluffy when I'm around my friends, unless somebody threatens one of my friends, in which case that's very different. It's very different. Fandom is one of the tribes where if something happens there and I'm there, which has occurred, that other part of me comes out. But on a day-to-day basis, you need to have a sense of courage, because people will tell you not to be yourself. They will, men will imply that they will hurt you if you're not what they want you to be. Women will imply that they will stop having sex with you unless you're what they want you to be. It's like, I don't play that. When I die, I'm going in my coffin alone. So to a degree, I'm walking alone, even though I've been married to my magnificent, wonderful wife for over 25 years. In another sense, we know that we're also alone. And so we treasure the time we have together. We treasure what we found in each other because of that existential loneliness. But the fact that there are people who've lost their own child self, and so they need to try to spit on somebody else's enthusiasm, screw them. Yeah. They don't get it. I can still watch the same damn Popeye and Bugs Bunny cartoon I loved when I was a kid, and love them and laugh my butt off, and nobody can tell me that I shouldn't. I make more money than you. I am tougher than you, and my marriage is better than yours. So don't tell me who I'm supposed to be. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's not the literal truth, but that is the position I'm coming. If you are so unhappy that you'll take the time to spit on somebody's enthusiasms, you are not a whole and healthy human being. It does not require not loving sunsets and puppies and hugs from little children in order to be an adult. You don't have to. You do not have to give that stuff up. I'm sorry, I go off.
No, that's fine. I'm gonna go hug my dog when I get out of this interview now. We're gonna leave it there. That was a great way to end it. Steven, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Not just talk about Mace Windu, the Glass Abyss, but just life journey, life advice. Thank you so much for being here.
Right. Always nurture the Jedi within. That's all I'm saying.
Amen.
All right.
Congrats on the book.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Well, stay online and I'll tell you a secret.
Yeah. Everyone else, go check it out. It just came out this week. Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss. Great book, especially if you're a Mace Windu fan, if you're a Star Wars fan, go check it out. So We'll be back next week. Myself and Oti. We'll cover whatever happened in New York Comic Con, a bunch of book news drop, and we'll talk about those. So thank you guys. See you next week. Stay safe. Be safe. May the force be with you.